Before I started living in London, my dream was to be on Broadway. To me, Broadway was the synonym of theater, musical theater, big stages, flashy lights. It was everything my dreams were made of. But only when I moved to London, I truly understood the power of the West End and how these two big theater giants are not that much different. In this video, I'm going to deep dive into 5 things that are crucial in understanding how both of them operate, and I hope that this video will bring some answers to the age-old debate of Broadway versus West End and help you decide where you want to see your next show. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Christina and I'm here to help you have the best London theater experience. I share my reviews, personal experiences, and tips and tricks how to get cheap tickets. And if you like the sound of it, then make sure to subscribe. So before we dive into these 5 aspects, let's talk about definitions first. So when we say Broadway, what do we refer to? And Broadway refers to the theater district in New York City, specifically around Times Square and 41st to 54th Streets, with 41 official theaters that seat 500 plus people. Whereas West End refers to the main theatre district in central London, especially around Covent Garden, Leicester Square and Shaftesbury Avenue, with 39 major commercial theatres, and it is the UK's equivalent of Broadway. So the first point that I wanted to talk about is history and where both of these theatre districts originated and how have they come about. Broadway has become a synonym of musical theatre because it is where musical theatre art form as we know today has originated. In the beginning of the 20th century, shows like Showboat and Oklahoma have really solidified the form of musical theatre as we know today. Whereas West End theatres and London theatres have been established for a longer time, but they have their roots in more traditional or Shakespearean type of theatre. And back in the day, the West End was more about plays rather than musicals. So I think for everyone who's a musical theatre lover, it is no surprise that Broadway is the first association they have with musical theatre, because this is where it all started. But that doesn't necessarily make Broadway better because it just started. It just makes the history surrounding Broadway musical theater scene richer, whereas West End's plays and traditional type of theater such as Shakespeare are what originally West End was known for. But obviously from those beginnings, a lot of things have changed and a lot of overlap has happened between these two, that today they do offer a very similar approach to theater, with both championing new musical theater and play productions and much more than that. So there isn't necessarily one that is better than the other. It's just that historically Broadway has been more associated with musicals and West End has been historically associated with plays. So let's move to the point number 2, and that is price. It is well known that Broadway is way more expensive than the West End, and there are multiple reasons why this is the case. However, I do think that when people are shopping for tickets or looking to go and explore all these different cities, they do associate price point with something being better, because this is just the way that we shop these days. If something is more expensive, it means that it's more premium. But that is not the case when it comes to the price of tickets for Broadway and West End. For example, you can see the exactly same production of Hamilton both on West End and Broadway. The set is the same. Obviously, the cast and the theater are different, but the quality of the production is the same. And not just Hamilton, the same goes for Wicked, The Lion King, The Book of Mormon, Hadestown. All these shows that are available in both cities, the quality is the same. The set is the same. It is just the fact that ticket prices are more expensive on Broadway than they are in the West End. There are a few reasons why this is the case. The first reason is that it is more expensive to put on a production on Broadway than it is on the West End. In fact, it is about 3 to 5 times less expensive to put on a production in London than it is in New York. And then to dive even deeper, this is about the way that the theaters and theater industry is funded, how it is regulated in terms of unions, how much actors are paid. In London, the UK government provides tax relief of up to 45% of production costs, and this support helps producers offer cheaper ticket prices, whereas on Broadway, they have introduced some tax incentives, but they're not as consistent and as big as the support from the UK government is. Another reason for Broadway being more expensive is that simply wages are higher on Broadway. Broadway has a higher base wages and overtime protections, and musicians and crew on Broadway are some of the highest paid in the world. Whereas in West End, these costs are cheaper, mainly due to the different union structures and how theater industry operates in London. This is not to say that one is better than the other. I'm sure that if you were to speak to West End versus Broadway actors, there will be plenty more differences to discuss here. Some are better than the others, but this is just to say what kind of like impacts the cost of the ticket. Another thing to bear in mind is that in the West End, you do have publicly funded theaters and institutions such as the National Theatre, and this kind of helps keep the prices a little bit lower. And then when you have other commercial theaters competing with the National Theatre, then they do need to be around the same price point. Whereas on Broadway, the theaters are purely commercial, so they can literally charge as much as they want, depending on the production, depending on the demand. Ultimately, they need to recoup the investment and justify the production costs, and sometimes that is actually reflected in the price of the tickets. So if we're talking Broadway versus West End when it comes to the prices, then West End is better because it is cheaper and more affordable for the same quality of production. So just to clarify this, there is nothing different with London productions compared to Broadway productions, especially for the shows that you can see in both cities. They're both of the same quality. It is just in a different city, the same exact production. So don't let the price point determine your thinking about Broadway being better because it's more expensive, because that is not true. My third point to discuss here is the talent. So actors who are performing on Broadway versus actors who are performing in the West End. A lot of the times people think that just the caliber of actors on Broadway is simply higher and better, and a lot of the times you hear about Broadway performers as the big stars. Both performers on Broadway and in the West End have put their blood, sweat, and tears into training to become professional performers. And both of these cities, London and New York, have really established big schools for musical theater, for acting. And it is really hard to say that one is better than the other. Both of these cities provide incredible training for people who are in the industry. And also both of these cities have created some of the world's most renowned actors and performers. And historically, it has been known that on Broadway you can see some of the biggest acting stars like Hollywood A-listers in plays or in musicals, and that was kind of like the main draw. But today you can see both A-list celebrities and up-and-coming actors who are going to become celebrities in both of these places. For example, the current production of The Sunset Boulevard is starring Nicole Scherzinger, but this originated actually in London, and now both Nicole Scherzinger and Tom Francis, who is the male lead in Sunset Boulevard, is definitely gaining the recognition and worldwide fame because of the role that he originated in London. Theatre is definitely piquing interest of celebrities more than before, and I particularly noticed that in the past couple of years because a lot of big stars from either Netflix shows or big movies have made their West End debut, such as, for example, Lily Collins, Alvaro Morte, Nicole Scherzinger, Tom Holland, Sarah Snook, and these are just like to name a few. But there are constantly new productions being announced with celebrity castings. This goes more to that conversation around justifying the investment in theater and getting people to really engage with theater by bringing some of their biggest stars. And again, this is part of a bigger conversation if this is good or not for the theater industry, because these big celebrities are definitely attracting new audiences. However, they're also making the prices go up. I remember for Romeo and Juliet with Tom Holland, it was impossible to find a ticket. They sold out immediately, and the ones that were left were like kind of £250, which is really expensive to pay for a theater ticket. But when it comes to the talent that you can see both on Broadway and in the West End, I can guarantee you that you will be equally amazed with the voices and performers and the quality of acting as craft on stage. So you should not be worried that Broadway is in any way more superior because of the talent, because that is not the case. The fourth point that I wanted to touch upon is the shows and productions you can see on Broadway versus West End. And as I hinted a few times throughout the video, there are a lot of shows which you can see in both New York and in London, and they are the same quality, the exact same productions in both cities, and there is no difference in terms of one being better than the other. And to solidify this point is also the fact that a lot of shows get transferred from London to New York and from New York to London, and this happens every year, and theater goers are really excited for this because a lot of the times when a show premieres on Broadway and gets a great acclaim, you know that eventually it's going to make its way to London at some point, and everyone is excited for it. And the same goes for London shows. Sunset Boulevard, Six the Musical, Operator Operation Mincemeat, all of these shows have originated in London and then slowly made their way to Broadway, where they're enjoying now a great acclaim and even bigger popularity in some cases than in London. Equally, London theatre audiences can enjoy transfers such as Hadestown, Shucked, Stereophonic, and many others that have transferred over the years. There are a lot of shows which you can see in both London and New York, but then there are so many shows that both of these cities are putting on every year, which are new shows, experimental shows, different shows, with shorter rounds, more or less investment, and sometimes they don't get transferred. But creatives in both of these cities are working so hard to bring fresh and new things to theater goers in both cities. So there isn't a shortage of new stories in both of these cities, and you're guaranteed to enjoy lots of great classics, which you can see in both, but then also a lot of different news stories which might actually steal your heart. And the last point that I wanted to talk about is capacity. A lot of the times people just assume that Broadway is bigger, which technically is true because there are 41 theaters that are considered to be Broadway theaters compared to 39 in the West End. But when it comes to actual capacity and number of visitors, things are looking slightly different. So for a theater to qualify as Broadway theater, it needs to have more than 500 seats. These rules are slightly different for West End, and there are slightly smaller theaters on West End that are considered part of the Theatreland or the theatre district. In London, the smallest theatre is about 350 seats. However, London Coliseum is considered the largest and it has 2,359 seats compared to the biggest theatre in New York, which is Gershwin Theatre, and it has 1,933 seats. So there are differences when it comes to the seat capacity in the theaters, but overall there are slightly more seats available in Broadway compared to the West End. But if we're looking into the actual numbers in terms of the number of visitors and ticket sales for 2024, actually West End is ahead of Broadway. There are about 5 million more audience members that attended West End shows compared to Broadway. So this actually suggests that West End is slightly bigger. With Broadway being located in New York, this is the go-to theater place for everyone who lives in the States, which is a much bigger country. So it's super impressive to see that West End numbers have actually surpassed Broadway's numbers, because technically you would assume that maybe there are more people going to Broadway because of just sheer sizes of the both country and the fact that America is purely English speaking, whereas even people who are coming from Europe or like all around the world to London, they might not be into theater because that is not their first language. These suggest that both Broadway and the West End have established audiences and more people coming to the theater than ever, which is super exciting because this means that theater as an art form is definitely going strong, and there will be more support and hopefully funding to really help boost amazing theater productions and share new stories and showcase amazing talent that we have in both of these places. I hope that this video has helped clarify certain things about Broadway and West End and brought you to the conclusion that both of these places are amazing for seeing theater, and that there's not one of these that is a winner or that is better, but that both offer the same quality of productions, talent, and experience of theater. If you're looking to hear more about the differences that I've spotted between Broadway and West End, then check out this video where I'm talking about my experiences of seeing a show on Broadway.